Hi, this is Herb Lair with my preview of 2025 National Plan to End Parkinson's podcast. The first, a brief review of 2024. Hi, this is Herb Lair, and I'm doing my podcast today from the Lucy Library on the 8th floor at UAMS, and it's again with Dr. Dahl, who is the chair, head of the neurology department. Just think of it as being Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. Age versus youth.
This podcast, it's got a one-on-one with Dr. Dahl, and I appreciate you setting up the time to talk to me today. I was looking through the videos, and I want to kind of start this way because I think it brings the interest in some of the reasons we're doing this. But I saw that when you were, I guess, becoming a doctor or deciding to be a doctor, maybe the 10th grade in high school, that you found that your father
My name is Dr. Rohit Dal. I'm one of the neurologists at UAMS. My reason for becoming a doctor and my reason for choosing my specialty both are tied to something that's quite personal to me. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease when I was in 10th grade, and so everything from there is moved based on finding new treatments, new cures for what my family has suffered with. I think of clinical care as a combination of managing lifestyle, trying to treat the underlying condition with what tools we have, and also looking at the future and trying to find new tools for treatment of condition.
Dr. Victoria Ramirez.
today is at the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. And I have with me Dr. Victoria Ramirez.
That's right.
Hey.
And what better place to work in museums than Washington, D.C.,
Right.
where you have all those museums in such a small geographic area.
Yeah.
And so my very first museum that I worked at was the Smithsonian.
Wow.
And I fell in love with the field from the very beginning. But to give you a little more information about me, I do go back to Cleveland regularly to visit my mother. And my mother has Parkinson's.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
She was diagnosed about 10 years ago. And about 4 years ago, we lost my father.
Okay.
So she lives on her own. And I have been watching the progression
Yeah.
of PD in her. And we see each other regularly, but I understand completely about having that cognitive awareness, but it could be spatial awareness that is challenging. For my mother, it's speech sometimes.
Right.
For my mother, it's she's lost the ability to use her handwriting like she used
Yeah,
to.
you see that a lot.
Yeah, but she regularly takes yoga and strength training classes at a place that's designed for people with PD.
Okay.
And it's really taught her how to navigate the world with this disease. And she is a member of the Cleveland Museum of Art.
Okay.
And she goes there regularly with her friends and with me when I'm in town. And it's really a delight to see her socializing and connecting with other people and seeing new things
Right.
that she encounters when she goes to the museum, because that's what keeps her mind going. And so I say all of that because I'm really delighted to meet you.
Well,
and I'm glad you're
delighted.
here.
I'm delighted to meet you, and that's something that I really wanted to bring out when I do.
Next is former Governor Jim Guy Tucker. He has early stage Alzheimer's, and his wife has Parkinson's.
but it's worked pretty well up to this point.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'm going to get some of my weight back so I can get around a little better.
Right.
I was driving without any difficulties, but Betty convinced me to stop driving around town. Now she's got Parkinson's, so
Yeah, I knew that. I knew you.
I argued with her about her Parkinson's. She argues with me about my Alzheimer's. And mine is not severe yet, nor is hers.
No.
But it's something we have to be sensitive to any place, but certainly in a city where the traffic is heavier. And that's just the way it is.
So after another location didn't work, we ended up at the Capitol Hotel restaurant for breakfast. Okay, this is their area of seating preference, and this is where we ate breakfast from. All right, I think we're just going to get started. We're just going to freewheel here. So it's Herb Blair and Governor Jim Tucker, and we're doing a podcast from the Capitol Hotel. How are you today, Jim?
Better than I deserve, fortunately.
That's the way we always are. I was amazed when I talked to you yesterday. I don't know. We don't usually have the video on there, but I noticed you were doing a feeding tube. What do you have to do now? I know you have Alzheimer's and you have some other. What are a list of things that you're doing now?
Well, I don't know that it's a big list. All of us take some pills for something, but I take a number of pills. I've had since I was in college and in the Marine Corps, a bunch of intestinal problems and surgery. I had a liver transplant Christmas Day of 1992 from an 18-year-old boy who was killed on Christmas Eve in a snowmobile accident. He had gotten his driver's license the day before and had signed the back.
Primary reason for the camera angle was because of privacy issues. We wanted to avoid other people in
that
the
18-year-old
hotel.
boy signed the back of his license to authorize donation of his organ.
Next is my podcast with Frank O'Meara, track star, and all the trials and tribulations.
The idea was that I had a lot of people that had gotten the image of Michael J. Fox, and I wanted to make sure that when they saw what I was doing and people I was talking to, that it comes a lot of different ways. You know, one person said that if you know a person with Parkinson's, you know one person with Parkinson's, basically, because I know that in reading your situation, it's the way it was kind of it's somewhat similar to mine. And I think there's one thing that I found, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but one of the people that really determined mine was Dr. Vermonti, and I know you went down and did some tests with him. Yeah, he's good. He's a good, really good, and I had some, I had some people look at it that were supposed to know something about it, and they didn't diagnose it 4 years before he did. So I think what you ran into there was some of the same issues. Now, I know you, have you done some things with speech, or how has that worked with you as far as?
My speech is poor, but I've taken the speech lessons, mainly loud.
Yeah.
Loud and proud or something.
Well, I was wondering because that's one of the things I've been trying to emphasize with mine.
Next is anchorman Dave Woodman.
I don't believe you.
Run.
What?
Oh, come on, Audrey. I look like hell. I got bags under my eyes. What's that? Well, if you were a man, I would punch you. I'd punch you right in the mouth. That's Bush. Bush League. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. You hear me? Audrey! Look at me! I'm sorry. All right? I'm sorry. Ho, 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 ho.
All right, we're on. Ready, Phil? We're on in 5, 4.
When the clock struck 6, it meant one thing for Ron Burgundy and his news team. Go time.
I've been doing a little bit of a docu-series, and I said, well, and this is, it's taped, and I'll do a little bit of editing, but it'll be a lot just what we say and do, and that's kind of where we are. But, I'm just thrilled to meet you. When you see somebody on TV, you kind of think, well, I know that guy, and really,
I hope so. That's the way we wanted it to be when we first started out. Roy and Tom and I had a lot of meetings with our general manager before we ever went on the air, and one of the prime requisites was, hey, you guys have got to go through the camera. You got to go through the television receiver at home, and these people have got, your viewers have got to feel like they know you, and I think that's what we kind of hung our hat on for.
well, I think
Well, the Ron Burgundy character was short-lived. Dave Woodman's wife had dementia, and I didn't want to disturb her.
Next is Craig O'Neill, longtime radio attitude pranks and a certified newsman on Channel 11.
Let's talk about reading. You're a super reader.
Now you're talking about language.
All right. Now, how did you get to be a super reader?
Well, here's the deal. Been in broadcasting 54 years, and for 31 of those, I would go to schools and tell kids to read. I mean, periodically. It wasn't a mission or anything. It was just when asked, and I didn't do that much. But every time I'd go, read, because it helps build your imagination. Well, Herb, in 2000, I'd been to Sheridan and done my usual speech. And I'm driving home, I'm feeling good, I made them laugh, blah, 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 blah. But a voice in my head said, you're not reading. You're telling kids to read, but you don't read. And that voice was absolutely correct.
No one better than Craig O'Neill to work on speaking with intent. Also, I found that his father had Parkinson, so that was one of the reasons he was so interested in what I was doing as far as a podcast.
In one books, the third year.
And what you plan to do there at the zoo. And I must start with,
Sure.
I know you're a director, and sometimes you hear the word zookeeper, and I wanted to make sure I understood the difference in what a director does at the zoo and what a zookeeper does, so that I kind of have an understanding of what your function there is. So.
Sure. So the executive director is, I guess what you would say is the head of the zoo. So I manage all the operations for the zoo and lead the function for the organization. We have several different divisions for the zoo. We have a division for facilities and operations, which is in charge of all of the construction and maintenance, janitorial. So I oversee that division. We have a division for the animals, which is the division for animal care and conservation. That's the largest division of the zoo, because it wouldn't be a zoo without the animals.
Right.
Right. So we have that division of the zoo. We have another division, which is our guest services division, which is the front line of the zoo, which is the division that takes care of our guests when they come through our front gate. And
one interesting thing was I noticed all the noise over where the gorillas are from the interstate highway. And it's kind of like Bitcoin mining or something. So I thought that was pretty loud. Hopefully I'll do something about that.
Division for education. Our conservation education division is responsible for all of our education outreach, our safari camps, for our on-site programs that we do for education, which is very important for the zoo because we want people to understand about the wonderful.
And Sidney Moncrief, Hall of Famer from the University of Arkansas, and also played with the Milwaukee Bucks and converted the Chenal Valley Church minister.
Have you here because it's a little easier
than trying to do it with Zoom. I know I had some issues. You didn't have issues, but last year was kind of funny. But the idea when I started putting this together is to provide some entertainment, but I also wanted to be informational and motivational.
Okay.
And we're sitting on some really tough bleachers here, I can tell.
Yeah.
So it's going. We want to get off the.
We definitely want to get off the bench here, don't we? Get in the game.
Yeah, and we want to be, and inspiring content for people that's got anxiety and depression are the big things.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have anxiety and depression, that's one of the things I worry about. Have you had any conversation with Cal Perry, or no conversation, or nobody?
I wrote him to buy books for the players, but I didn't hear back with anybody.
Here was Bryce seeing the light.
Hey,
put him on blast.
We're gonna get him off the bench.
Yeah, we need to get him off the bench in the game real quick on that one.
Well, what kind of advice would you give him if you ever talked to him? I mean, I
wouldn't give him any advice. No, he's coached long enough. He's a veteran. He knows the advice is get the best players.
Yeah,
guys are coachable, and hopefully they stay healthy.
Well,
games.
And I know the history when you came over, or stayed in state, and the triplets basically were 3 players in state, and I know the history of the Razorback football, and it's pretty well had to have a core of Arkansas players. I don't see any Arkansas.
Herb Lair, as we close out 2024, 2025 is going to be a big year. Okay, we got President Trump coming in, but we also have the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act being in, I guess it's been enacted as far as the presidential signature on it, but it's going to come in, and I was wanting to kind of show that there's been kind of more of a sound of silence about that. I don't know whether everybody thinks it's going to end up in research or whatever, but I'm hoping to build interest in my podcast, because I try to do a lot of things that are entertaining to a level, and in my selection of guests, but also educational and motivational. And I try to make that point every time I start a podcast, because I want to reach a lot of people. Some of the people I want to reach, of course, is pretty much a broad base of people who experience, obviously the normal things of depression and anxiety and somewhat delusional. Occasionally I get on to the political end of it, because there are concerns I have. I got Parkinson's, of course, and some other things that go along with that, or maybe not necessarily with other people, but I do experience some other things because I do have a pacemaker, an AFib, and a lot of issues. I've had spinal cord stimulator, so I've gone down the whole 9 yards of everything that you can try to improve. And one of the things that you'll find real quickly about Parkinson's is that people who sit and don't do anything have a history of going down very fast. I just put the book there in the background, but you could see right off that A Son's Journey talks about his mother having Parkinson's and why she might have gone down faster than others and his disappointment. But he also talks about being a person that, he's a caregiver, and now he's an advocate. So I think that's a great story that I want to touch on a little bit again. I thought I'd read some from the book I bought. And again, it's Dr. George Ackerman, A Son's Journey from Parkinson's Disease Caregiver to Advocate, in memory of my mother, Sharon. I'll read over page 10. My father wanted to become a doctor. He could only seek his goals if my mother sacrificed her career and education, and she did. She also sacrificed a lot of others throughout her life. After marriage, she gave up teaching to raise a family, my brother and me. She devoted herself completely to her children, giving me a wonderful, loving, attentive childhood, and always stressing the importance of education. That is probably why I am successful in education now. I have several advanced degrees and teach at the undergraduate, master's, and doctorate level. She was by my side through every graduation. Every day I thought I would not make it through our program, and every one life's journey challenges. I believe I am the man I am today due to my mother's sacrifices, and I am forever grateful. In addition to being my mother, she was my coach and mentor. My parents were married from 1972 to 1995, 23 years. In 1995, they divorced, a blow to the family. But my mother carried on and devoted herself to her children and later grandchildren. Shortly after the divorce, we moved to Florida to be near her mother and sister. We were happy for many years, but the first troubling signs were in 1999 and progressively became worse. In 2005, when she was in her early 50s, her left arm became rigid. I was very busy with law school, the police academy, my doctoral study, and building my own family, but we spoke every day. And then in 2016, the symptoms became more serious. During everyday activities, for example, eating, she said her left arm hurt, and I noticed she was having trouble cutting her food. She would express frustrations, but none of us were aware that it was Parkinson's disease. So you can see that it went several years before it became noticeable. And again, sometimes if it's diagnosed early, then certain things can be done to maintain or at least avoid the progression that she had, because it came on pretty fast. And I think that's one of the things that he wanted to detail is all the attention in his diary. I think that the book is really good in showing all that information and connecting it with any associated illnesses or dementia. and talks about the 5 stages. And I thought I'd leave that to people who want to buy the book. And again, that's Dr. George Ackerman. And he has a PhD, and he's also an attorney, and he's passed the bar, and he lives in Florida. So he's got a lot of credentials that can show you some of the things that people are faced with. Clip this in with a lot of things that I want to make sure that I have a great understanding of people I've talked to, people who have either parents or family with Parkinson's. And you can see what I'm trying to do with this podcast is to make sure that we can develop, get the subscribers. The only thing you have to do is free, is to subscribe. And that helps me with the demographics to take to advertisers and sponsors. And I hope to get that in place as we go into 2025. I've got a lot of great people I've worked with, a lot of things that are actually free and won't be the cost of the millions and trillions and billions that the government's going to pour into this, and not really get the effects that I can provide through my podcast and through the contacts I've developed.
Unanimously passed the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act, a bill that for the first time marshals agencies across the government to tackle this disease, this awful disease, in a comprehensive way. I thank Senators Murphy and Capito and everyone who championed this bill. Parkinson's is truly a terrible illness. It's taken an awful toll on my own family, my mom's.
Well, it'd be nice to see a little emotion and empathy from the senator there. He just reads and never looks up and never really makes it anything more than clinical.
Once and for all. by promoting better Parkinson's research, encourage more effective treatments and other measures. With this bill, we're taking one step closer to bringing this awful disease to an end, and I thank everyone who made it possible. I also in particular wish to thank Representative Jennifer Wexton of Virginia, who has spent months championing this bill even after being diagnosed with a particularly rare form of Parkinson's. She's an inspiration. While many would have been discouraged or lost hope with a disease like this, she has endured. She has used her struggle to help others, and now the bill goes to the president's desk.
Parkinson's link to gut bacteria suggests unexpected, simple treatment. Health 26, June 2024, by Tessa Kumunduros. Illustration of bacteria on the colon epithelium. Nanoclustering Science Photo Library Getty Images. Researchers have suspected for some time that the link between our gut and brain plays a role in the development of Parkinson's disease. A new study just identified gut microbes likely to be involved and linked them with decreased riboflavin, vitamin B2, and biotin, vitamin B7, pointing the way to an unexpectedly simple treatment that may help. B vitamins.
Well, one thing I've done is I've looked at about any and all situations to evaluate possible things to treat my Parkinson's, and one was a gut analysis, but that might fit in with the RFK Jr.'s style, or maybe some of the others that's coming in to health. But I've been there, done that, because I've always tried to be progressive in things that I did. I'm going to skip some of this because it's just same old, but I did want to indicate that I have looked at a bunch of different things.
Underwhelming national attention to the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act. I wonder why it was treated in such a clinical way, and why people are talking about how they're going to do it with less, I guess, emotion and less compassion for ending Parkinson's. I think there should be much more excitement, much more interest in starting and providing solutions to the plan.
Today, we're found our happy place, and we're at the Van Buren County Library in Clinton, Arkansas. Dr. Lyda Kreiner. But the idea here is a follow-up to one we had previously, and the reason for the follow-up this soon is of course, the national plan, and that's to more or less for Parkinson.
All right, more than 10 million people in the world are living with Parkinson's disease. Here in the U.S., nearly 90,000 people are diagnosed every year, which is why a new bill President Biden just signed into law is so important. Fox 13's Shira Masuzawa breaks it down.
For me, this bill is about hope.
Hope. A four-letter word that carries a lot of weight. And for Northwest Parkinson's Foundation's Executive Director Virgil Sweeney, President Biden signing the national plan to end Parkinson's Act into law gives a newfound hope to the nearly 1 million people in the U.S. living with Parkinson's right now.
Parkinson's disease is the fastest growing neurological disorder in the world right now.
Earlier this week, the president signed that act, making it the first ever federal legislation dedicated to ending Parkinson's disease. The legislation will increase federal research funding, develop more effective pathways for treatments and cures, and improve early diagnosis. It will also put together a task force to help people with Parkinson's, but also the caregivers and families.
Sometimes those are the people that get forgotten, and they bear a lot of the burden.
Sweeney says this takes effect next year, but it's already a huge step forward because this means resources will come sooner, and hopefully a difference will be made in the near future, not the distant future.
A lot of people with Parkinson's live in their own world, and we want to let them know it's okay to have Parkinson's, and there's a whole community available to them to help them through their journey.
The key word there is putting together a task force, which we're interested in being part of that facilitation. Okay, the national attention given is very underwhelming, and the people who talk about it is very clinical. So how could it ever succeed?
Take care of people with Parkinson's, and that's been, I guess, voted on, accepted by Congress, but also signed by President Biden. And so that act has been been activated, but it's also there are plans in the future to bring it to the public in various ways. Now, the reason it's kind of motivated me for this podcast today was I was listening to a Q&A and it involved Leslie A. Chambers, President and CEO of American Parkinson.
Federal legislation dedicated to the prevention and cure of Parkinson's disease. Ted Thompson is the Senior Vice President of Public Policy at the Michael J. Fox Foundation, who led the advocacy team that was instrumental in getting this bill passed. Ted has more than 30 years of experience in public policy and government affairs, serving in several nonprofit leadership positions, and as well as serving on the staff for 2 members of Congress. Ted also helped create the Unified Parkinson's Advocacy Council, or UPAC, of which APDA is a member. So let's bring Ted to the screen to share the latest updates on the status of this new law and explain why it's so important. Welcome, Ted.
Thanks, Leslie. Great to be here, and I appreciate the partnership with APDA through the years. You've been an important partner in advocating around public policy issues, and you mentioned UPAC. That's a broad-based effort to draw in as many Parkinson's and Parkinsonism's organizations as possible, so that on policy issues we're speaking with one voice. And a prime example of what that will get us is the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act.
Can you please give us a brief overview of the National Plan to End PD and the significance of it for our community?
Absolutely. And I will state at the outset that this was not my original idea. I saw what was working really well for the Alzheimer's community and thought, you know what, we're the second fastest growing neurodegenerative disease in the world, and we need a national plan to address Parkinson's, both research, care, diagnostics, the whole 9 yards. So what the national plan does is it establishes an advisory council of federal and non-federal members. That on the non-federal, they're all going to be people, experts in Parkinson's, including Parkinson's patients, caregivers, providers, researchers, and at the federal appointees will all have some role to play in the Parkinson's paradigm. So the advisory council will be established, will require the Secretary of Health and Human Services to submit a report to Congress, also identifying level of research funding that needs to happen. And just, to put it in perspective, with Alzheimer's, their research funding went from roughly $450 million a year to the most recent fiscal year, $3.8 billion. They've had a massive increase. And in the Parkinson's space, the federal government spends about 100 times more money caring for people with Parkinson's than they do researching the underlying disease. And we think that's got to be changed, significantly changed.
So how much more clinical can you get as far as having these people talk about ending Parkinson's or any kind of a plan? I'm sure that it just gets everybody excited. No?
Disease Association, and she brought in Ted Thompson, who's a Senior Vice President of Public Policy of the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and they talked in terms of having a national advisory council of federal and non-federal members for the research, care, and caregivers. So we feel like we have put together a coalition of people, and we're working on other people, but ourselves. I've been doing a podcast and also to educate, and as I've mentioned in the past, that many people have issues with anxiety and depression, and we've talked about some of that, but that's one of the big things that's not only with Parkinson's, but people that's been found to commit suicide, and also other people that are involved with disabilities or even no disabilities, they have those issues. But I've been trying to do this podcast so it could be visual on YouTube, and you can find that under my channel. That's Herb Blair under YouTube, and the name of it is Finding Your Happy Place. But recently, and that's why we're getting a bigger distribution and people that are listening, is from our Apple podcast. And you'll find that that's primarily audio, but it reaches a lot broader group of people, and they can listen to it when they're traveling, and so it's very good for mobility. But we understand that in order to get this idea that we're presenting in front of people, that we're going to have to work with a lot of politicians and even businesses. The idea is that a big company, even like Walmart or some of the other large companies that's in Arkansas, such as Tyson's or even Missouri Bass Pro, or it's going to be a good program and content for their employees in order to take care of their health care. And then also they may see fit to have something like this available to their customers. So we're going to get into that a little more in detail, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what I saw in the Q&A as far as the act, and they said this could be a Trojan horse, and we have to be careful in what we think about and recommend, and that's why we wanted to present what we bring to the table, but also that we have some skills that have been proven, and we know some people and things that can help in not only prevention but better care for people. So I want that to be part of our discussion today, and I think the point that Ted Thompson made was, he said, to make sure government does what it's told to do by Congress.
Government. One point that I want to make, though, is we need to make sure that the government does what it's been told to do. Sometimes things like this pass, everybody does their victory lap and says how great we are because we did this bill, and then they move on to something else. That's a recipe for failure. And so we are going to be keeping an eye on this, watching this, working with you and others to make sure that the federal government does what it's been told to do by Congress.
Right. The whole race isn't finished until we get to the end, and that's the point of advocacy, that we will be staying on top of that, and all the groups combined from.
I've seen that in a lot of cases where it comes a boondoggle pretty fast if they don't. And so we're hoping that people with skills, and we're going to talk about what we think is necessary in our coalition. So I wanted to start with that background, and then start with Lida talking about some of the things that she's been involved with, and some things, material. I know she's writing some articles now, and so you want to just give me some thoughts and ideas of what you see that needs to be done to improve, particularly the care and health care.
Well, that's a very broad topic, Herb. I'm wanting to hone in specifically on the lost and forgotten people who are struggling, very sad and unhappy and depressed in nursing homes, other facilities, or even at home with a caregiver. And also look at the caregivers and their problems, their issues, and their needs. So it's specific and not as broad as it seems that this End Parkinson's Act is. But this would be a very important component of not leaving these people behind, these persons, these individuals who are not getting the services that they need, particularly caregiving, which CNAs and people on duty with a big heavy schedule really just go in and leave the food, and they say, how are you? And some of the people are too depressed to even respond. And so I think there's a place where someone like I am and others could fit in that middle place where the persons, the individuals don't want to live and they don't want to die. And so that middle place that I mentioned would be the happy place where we could go in and look at their levels of what I call dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin and endorphins and get those hormones or whatever activated so the people would even want to eat their meal or do their therapy or live. So that's kind of simplistic in a way.
So Dr. Craner's observations were exactly what we see in the book as far as the frustrations of finding caregivers that actually do more than just check boxes. He had with finding people to aid or help with his mother, because he had a lot of things going, kids, and he had a lot of things as far as career. The difficulty of finding good aid companies or individual aid to help care for mother or mom led me to make a list of errors, troubling behavior, and cautions to keep in mind when interviewing the companies and aids. Prior to finding the final excellent aids from Reliance, I still cannot believe that in my 4 years of searching and incessant interviewing, I had to remind the so-called professionals or some of these areas, we do not want mom to remain only in her bedroom permanently. So daytime aids, take her outside to the patio, help her walk, help her do things that she no longer can do herself. Never leave mom alone. She fell once when she was left alone. Please remember to follow the medicine pill box instructions strictly, and if anything runs out, notify me or the nurse immediately. Some did not follow the correct medicines, doses, or schedules, all of which are life-threatening. It said, please be pleasant and supportive. Don't wear perfume. Keep areas clean. Don't yell at mom. She has Parkinson's and dementia and may need extra care. Be able to understand Parkinson's disease, understand dementia, understand fibromyalgia, understand the possible hallucinations and delusions that come with PD, communicate with mom and me. Communication is critical. Never say hospice. That word tremendously depressed and upsets my mother.
So when you ask me what I've been doing, I've been researching articles and journals, looking into the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and there's a lady, I think her last name is Peace, P-E-A-S-E. She has a website that has so many different approaches and ways to help people. But really, when this act or this movement or congressional bill signed to end Parkinson's, I'm looking at the big foundations, which already said they would do that 20 years ago, and we're still, in the same place. For instance, what's his name? James Parkinson, discovered or was named in 1871. I don't know. Maybe it was 1817. I'm not sure. Well, anyway, it's more than 200 years later, and he would have been turning over in his grave because nobody followed up with what he wanted to do. I mean, he said, I'm baffled. I don't know the cause. I want my colleagues, my science people, to follow up and find the cure. Well, here it is more than 200 years later, and here we are sitting in the Van Buren County Library looking at these problems. So biting off more than I can chew, but at least I have to try to jump in there and at least go and see the people that are hurting and suffering, that are underrepresented, don't have insurance to cover the things that they need, that are so highly advertised that will help. So that's where I am. I don't know that I would fit in anywhere in this.
Well, I guess the case is that we're kind of, a lot of times we're in a position where we fend for ourselves. And I'm speaking from personal example. I was kind of diagnosed 12 years ago, but I kind of muddled around. I did a lot of things and went on as normal as you can be.
Did you feel like you were normal?
Well, I did some things that were like I had done before, but we were going through a phase, even in the commercial aspect of it, where 9/11 had impacted some of the things I had done in the past as far as international travel, and so
I started working with companies in the U.S. and did a limited amount of travel, but I was having some difficulties with my walk, and actually 8 years ago I'd had major surgery and had with a titanium rod put in, and I found out after that I had a dropped foot, and I actually was not a whole lot better. And Dr. Tuan Vermani at UAMS looked at it a little closer, and he determined that it was Parkinson, which I had taken the test, a full day test in 2012, that they had failed to, determine that, which that was their charge, was to find out that. So
you can go to the Non-Motor Parkinson's podcast to get the rest of the story. As far as Parkinson awareness, you see the tulip, but you also see the PD that's down there below.